my introduction. I did not get the introduction recorded because the things I said about Mr. Cravalho, he may not want put out. So if you could share it, go for it. Well, let's introduce my friend from Hawaii, Mr. Robert Cravalho.
Thank you very much, Tom. We all know that in humor, exaggerating the story is always to make it a little bit more humorous, and that's exactly what Tom did with that story. So thank you very much, Tom. I wanted to do something a little bit different in that I'd like to do an educational, and then hopefully you'll see the humor in it. Hopefully I'll have some humor. First, I want to thank you for having me again. Mahalo to Tom and Marjane for inviting me here. I'm a little bit intimidated, I have to be honest with you, because the type of group that I'm in front of, I don't consider myself a humorous speech person, if you will. But I'll do my best, at least to keep it funny or entertaining for you. I was wondering if you were professional speakers, and some of you may be, what type of speaker would you be? Would you be an inspirational speaker or a humorous speaker, or maybe you'd be a Bose speaker? Those are pretty expensive to get. But really, it doesn't matter what type of speaker you are. What's important is that you touch your audience. And one of the best ways, of course, to touch your audience is through humor. So I'd like to do this workshop for you. I did this for District 49 at one of their district conferences, and it went over very well. This, of course, is an abbreviated version to fit in the time that we have with each other. And so I just want to jump into it. It's entitled Consider the Audience, and we talk a little bit about perspective between the audience and the speaker. This was an actual photograph that I took, and this is a drive-through window at one of our local restaurants. It's a chain restaurant here. It's the drive-through, as I mentioned, but it's not a typical drive-through as you might see at other fast food chains. There's no place to order. So if you're driving through, it's because you placed an order on the phone or you placed the order through your mobile app. But when you drive up to the window's not always staffed, because it doesn't take orders, it just delivers your order. And so I pulled up to this window when I saw this. Sorry, our bell is out of order. And I was wondering, when you look at this picture, what do you think about this restaurant? What's going through your mind, perhaps? If they can't even keep a bell in order, what other equipment do they have that might not be working? Or what does it say about their efficiency to get things working correctly? This is an embarrassing sign from my friend Gary in his restaurant. And ladies, I'm sorry to tell you, but this was in the urinal in the men's room. And it reads, to all employees, please keep our restrooms clean, tidy, and also replenish supplies. Mahalo, or thank you, Gary. When you read this sign, what do you think about the relationship between Gary and his employees? Probably not so good. What about his employees? Maybe they're a bit lazy. My point of showing you these is to let you know that your message makes us think. Your message makes us think. So we have to be careful sometimes with our message. This is an actual email, well, at least the wording, from an email that went out to the staff from corporate concerning employee appreciation. And I apologize for reading to adults, but it says, after several months of strong sales, we decided to produce employee appreciation t-shirts that will go on sale Monday. So if you're an employee of this group, of this corporation, are you really feeling appreciated? Do they really care about you? This photograph is one of my favorite. It says it all. An army service man with a sign that says, I'm coming home. And so that evokes a lot of emotion with us as well, right? So my point in showing you those photographs is your message makes you feel. Not only does your message make us think and feel, right? So your message is very important. This sign, I had to go around the block. A gentleman standing on the side of the road. It was a while ago, Hurricane Harvey. I forget, that was several years ago. But they were having a car wash, a charity car wash for the survivors of Hurricane Harvey. But what was wrong with this sign is it never said when, it never said where, it never said how much. The sign was great, but it didn't really give us the information we needed. This sign had to go around again. If you're familiar with Honolulu, this is Kalihi, which is kind of a little bit lower income area. And there's a side street there where everybody junks their appliances, sofas, and such. So this person, I guess, was fed up. And so they took this dry board with an eraser and they wrote a letter. an eraser with a Sharpie, and they wrote this note: "Donut." I'm sure they meant do not, but donut. Put your rabbis. I'm sure they meant rubbish here. Okay. Now, even though this sign is riddled with imperfection, it gets its message across. And my point here is just to let you know that your message makes us do. Your message will make us do. So, to bring it all together, your message will make your audience think, feel, and do. Very important for us to remember. When we're on the stage, we are influencing those that have come to share their time with us. And we can make them think, feel, or do based on what we say. So let's put that aside for 1 minute and let's look at this picture. Obviously, a collision in the middle of an intersection, two drivers out there exchanging pleasantries, perhaps. Now, if you were driving by this scene and you wanted to stop to help, what would your priorities be if, let's say, you were in the medical field, let's say a doctor or a nurse or EMT? What would be your first priority if you came across this scene? Most of you are thinking injuries. That's right, because that's what you're thinking. Do they need medical attention after this accident? So that would be your priority. Now let's change it up a bit. Let's say you're driving by this scene and you stop to help, and let's say you're a retired or off-duty law enforcement officer, let's say a sheriff or a police officer. What would be your priority? And you're right if you think investigation or clear the road so we can get back to the normal traffic pattern, because obviously it's not injuries because those both drivers are outside of their car. But let's change it up one more time. Let's say you're driving by this scene and you want to stop and help. And let's say you are a personal injury attorney.
Oh.
Now, what would be your priority? Now, why is it that we can look at the same incident or the same event, but we'll have different priorities? And that just goes through the lenses that we look through. As we go through life, we look through different lenses. We have different priorities. We can all see the same thing, but our perspective is different. Who's right and who's wrong? Is it a number 9 or is it a number 6? Well, it depends on your perspective. So my point here is that when we are on the stage with that ability to make our audience think, feel, and do, should we be looking at this through our own perspective as a speaker, or should we be looking at it through the audience perspective? And I believe that we should look at our message through the audience lens. I've seen too many speakers say, well, this is what I want to tell them. This is what they're going to hear from me. When it should be maybe, what does the audience want to hear from us as a speaker, and how do we adapt to that lens? So I came up with this audience wish list. If I did it with you, you would come up with probably more, or maybe some of these you'd cross off. But as an audience member, as I'm sitting there and Tom Hobbs is inviting us to, or introducing our next speaker that I'm going to be listening to for the next 90 minutes, what do I want to see in that speaker? And here's a few of them. I want that speaker to dress nicely, at least appropriately for the occasion. I want to make sure that I can hear them, that they're using their microphone properly, and that they have a good voice. I want them to manage their time. Please don't waste my time. I'm giving it to you. Please manage it accordingly. If you're speaking for 90 minutes, then please don't go over 90 minutes. We want you to be organized, right? Beginning, a middle, and end. We want you to speak plainly. Don't use a lot of vernacular. In my talk, my speeches, as Tom mentioned, I was a hostage negotiator. We all know there's a lot of police jargon, and I stay away from that because the common people don't know. Common audiences don't know that jargon. We want you to use gestures and facial expression and move with purpose. Of course, we learned that through Toastmasters. But because we're on this virtual platform, moving with purpose might be meaning just coming closer to the camera or moving back too. So that's also moving with purpose. Visual aids are always good to enhance your presentation. I'm using a PowerPoint here. I hope I'm doing a decent job. We want you to have a lot of energy, because if you have energy, the audience will feed off of that energy and vice versa. We all know that we want to use stories, and we want to use humorous stories. And as Tom had mentioned in my introduction, he exaggerated that introduction a little bit to make it a little bit more humorous. We want you to make a point. Please don't waste our time. Share something with us that's valuable, something that I can take away right away. And know your stuff. Be competent in what you're talking about. Of course, humor. That's what we're here talking about, is humor. Because everybody loves a story, but if it's a funny story, they're going to remember it. Again, we want it informative. We want to learn something. We want you to connect with us. And the best way to connect is using questions, which I did at the beginning of this presentation, asking you what kind of speaker you would be. We want you to be likable. We want you to have fun. If you're having fun, then the audience is having fun. So this would be my wish list as an audience member. This is what I'm looking for when I see a speaker being introduced that I'm going to listen to for the next 90 minutes. Now, this is just a personal list that I wanted to share with you. These are my I don'ts. These are things that I don't do when I speak professionally. You may choose to do them. That's fine. I'm just saying this is what I don't do. I never make my audience the punchline of my jokes. You can alienate your audience very, very quickly. Even if you're using jokes about, let's say, a spouse or a boss at work, you can still alienate audiences that way. So as far as punchlines, I'm always the punchline. I am the one who forgot to do this. I'm the one who read the sign wrong. I'm the one who fell down, whatever it is. I never make the audience the punchline of my joke. I don't use inside jokes. I'm sure you've seen speakers show up. Hey, it's great to be here. I see some familiar faces. I see Tom over there. Tom and I go back in Toastmasters for a long time. Tom, remember the last time we talked and we were having dinner at that restaurant and the waitress came over? Remember that? That was hilarious. Don't tell us stories unless you're going to bring us into it. Don't tell us inside jokes unless you're going to invite the audience into that joke. So stay away from there. Don't make your audience your therapist. And this one is a little bit tough, but I know people share some very personal stories in their speeches. And maybe they can get a little choked up and have to take a moment. I understand that. But for me, I believe that if you can't share a personal story without choking up or holding back tears, then you're not ready to share that story. So wait a little, let some time heal or what have you. I don't think you're ready. And finally, I don't use props. Now, in humor, props can really enhance your jokes or what you're doing, your humorous speech. So props are good. Look at Marjane with her wizard hat. So props are good. I just don't use them because I subscribe to Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. And I can give you a lot of examples of when I tried to use props and it didn't really work out as well. And I got anxious and lost my space and everything. So I just stay away from props. What I do use though is gestures and grand gestures. If he's a big man and you want to be a big man, if he was tall and strong, then those are the gestures that you want to perform. I just stay away from props. And those are my I don'ts. So to wrap it up, your message makes us think, feel, and do. So as we walk through life, we have different lenses. We want to look at the lens from the audience perspective so we can enhance the value of your presentation, whatever it is that you're making them think, feel, and do. Review your audience wish list before you get on stage. Something simple like volume. Do they have a microphone? Do I know how to use it? Is it lavalier? Is it over the ear? Is something I got to hold? What if I want to do different things while I'm up there? So make sure that you get through your audience wish list and check off all of those items on that list. And again, my I don'ts. Just for me, and I just sharing them with you, some of the things that I don't do when I'm presenting. But the last thing I want to leave you with is this, and if you remember this, you will hit a home run every time you speak. If your message comes from your heart, your message will touch their hearts. I think I left some time for some Q&A. Tom knows how to get a hold of me. I'm on the web. I want to be a resource for all of you. So if there's anything that I can do for you, if you're interested in becoming an accredited speaker, by all means, let me know. I'd be happy to help you or at least point you in the right direction. Those are my contact information. And again, Tom knows how to get a hold of me. So with that, Tom, I'll turn it over if we have time for Q&A.
Yes, we're definitely going to have time for a couple of questions and maybe a closing statement from you as well to push us towards our finding humor. You and I hang out with each other as buddies. We're humorous. As you get on stage and you're a accredited speaker, even when you were testing as accredited speaker, you found time to find a few laughs in there. I watched you on the big stage. I still got pictures of you.
Yeah.
From the room, let's see a hand or two. I'll help call out. Question. First I see is from Terry Wells. Terry.
Yes, you mentioned, Robert, great presentation. You mentioned that you don't use props. Are you saying then that you don't consider PowerPoint a prop?
I consider PowerPoint a visual, but PowerPoint is a prop too. I mean, it could go wrong. I'll tell you, as a professional speaker, when I first started out, people would say, oh, just show up. We have the screen, we have the projector, we have the computer, just bring a thumb drive and you show up and nothing works. So I learned as I was going through to, speaking, that I brought all my equipment. And even if their equipment worked, I always had mine as a backup. So do I consider it a prop? Yeah, I guess it is, because things could go wrong. But when I say a prop, I mean specifically when I was doing the accredited speaker level 2 in Canada, I was going to bring a pair of sunglasses out from my breast pocket of my coat, because I was going to be a police officer. So I was going to put on those mirrored shades, the ones that police officers wear, make them look real scary. And of course, when I reached in to pull it out, it got hung up. And so for a minute there, I was actually wrestling with my jacket. I got a little anxious. I got a little nervous. So I guess that's what I'm referring to as props. If you're going to use props, I'm just saying, practice, practice, practice. Make sure the batteries in that flashlight are good. The bulb is good. Practice, practice, practice so that it goes off without a hitch. But for me, Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. I just stay away from props. But I think PowerPoints are important because look at those photographs that I showed you. You would have not have experienced it if I did not have a PowerPoint. So yes, PowerPoint is a prop, but I think it's one that I will use because I'm a little bit more confident in it. Does that answer your question, Terry?
Yes. And Gloria, your hand's up. Or is that just a prop? Gloria and I get along really well. She's got a, Gloria does a great interview process too as well. Yeah, sharing time on stage and props can be exactly that, a headache. And how you use those when you have those oopses also shows your skills. So it's one thing I didn't point out to Bobby and Bobby to the rest of you. Bobby is an accredited speaker. And I'm very honored to know several, and we've had several come in and speak here. That means that they've gone farther than a DTM, Distinguished Toastmasters. They're out in the world practicing and sharing and training. So once again, awesome right there. Looking around the stage, everybody's just sensation, a lot of note writing going on. What's your closing statement for us, Bobby, for us to remember how we can always look for that opportunity to have just a little bit of humor in those serious situations? Morris just popped in. Morris, do you have a real quick hand up?
Yeah, I do have a quick question here, and I apologize I got on late here. Two questions I have. Quick one is, I'd like to see if there's a replay that I can see this here. And my second question is, I'm doing my very first stand-up comedy this Wednesday. Any quick tips to say, besides being you, work the stage, location memory and all that good stuff, and just being funny?
Yeah, well, the first one is you have to have fun. That's the first. If you're not having fun, it's not worth doing it. So you got to have fun. You got to get up there and you got to have fun. You're having a party, invited this audience. You're going to tickle their funny bone for the next 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. But you just have to have fun. I think that's important. And again, as I mentioned, Tom was asking for closing thoughts. And that is my closing thought. If it comes from your heart, it will touch their hearts. And that's what's important, because an audience will see right through you if you're fake. Yeah. So you just don't be fake and you have fun. I'm sure you do well.
And actually, I think interesting you mentioned that, to be not fake, because I know the material I have and I know it's going to have an impact as far as humor wise. But to make it so it doesn't seem fake, I told myself I got to practice it 100 times. So that way I'm not trying to remember it. All I got to do is focus on just interacting with the crowd and presenting it in a way that, again, according to where the crowd's at. Yeah.
And that's one thing. You don't want to be too rigid. You don't want to be memorizing it so much that it's ABC and all of a sudden it went ABD and you're like, oh no. Yeah. So yeah, memorize it so you're confident with it, but you can always edit it while you're up there as well. And another piece of advice I'll give you, and I used to do this before, don't step on their laughter. If you do something and they start laughing, back up and let them go. I've done speeches where I never thought this line would be funny. And all of a sudden I got a roar from the crowd and I had to stop and hesitate so that I wouldn't step on their laughter, which becomes a problem. Sorry to draw this out when you're in a contest, because you might do your contest speech, you practice it, you're at 6 minutes and 45 seconds, you're good to go, right? And you're happy there. but all of a sudden the audience will laugh. You're gonna have to take time, and it takes time off the clock. So that's another thing that you have to consider. But again, advice, have fun and watch out. Don't step on their laughter. Let them enjoy it.
Perfect. And I got one last quick question, if you don't mind me asking, because obviously I'm in a room full of people who have great wisdom and expertise. I've been asking this question for 7 years. I asked the Edmonton Police, the RCMP, the provincial government, the federal government, and everybody in between. And every time I ask, they just laugh at me. So if you go to a store and you talk to a sales rep about buying a garbage can, is that trash talk? Hey.
Touche, Morris. You'll do well in your stand-up. Good luck to you, my friend.
Well, thank you so much for all this information. And yes, boils down to what Robert said, know your audience. And that goes for stand-up comic, presentation, credited speaker, anywhere. Know your audience, speak for your audience, with them. What's in it for me? So, my friend, thank you for sharing your time all the way from Hawaii. Aloha. Every time we get together, he'd sneak around, pull out a box of macadamia nuts covered in, I don't know how he ever got those things on the airplane out to visit with me. I always appreciate it. Thank you so much, my friend. Phil, welcome to stay and hang out with the rest of the meeting. Also, if you have to go visit other things, we respect that. Thank you for stepping forward as an international director candidate and sharing so much information with so many people this past year, sharing your accredited speaker guidance with all of us. And if there's any way that we can promote you, please let us know. We'd like to share more of Robert with the world. Thank you.